Brian Giles with Brian Giles MTG, and I am back with the third video in the Mark Rosewater Unfinity text spoilers. So next up, we have reminder text that appears in the set. So these are also things that you would see that that basically explain what the card does. So first off, we have anything with two or more capitalized words in its name that begin with the same letter is alliterative. And again, this is more letters matter. And I'm gonna come to this shortly because we're gonna have the final one. And I know you guys have been chomping at the bit. This is long. And originally I created this in a whole, most of it was like a 30-minute video, and that takes forever for me to upload. So I'm chopping it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. So we're going to come up pretty soon to what this all leads to. Next up is a top is an outerwear garment worn on the upper body. This, in a previous unset, they talked about pants, and so you had to pull your pants off, and it's like, yeah, that got to be a little crazy and silly because people were actually, they were having untournaments and stuff, and they were pulling the pants off, and inappropriate things were happening there. So. So they're doing it with tops this time, and they're really defining it so that there isn't some inappropriate stuff going on. That's in a card shop tournament type environment. Next up is the card, not your head. So again, you might have like a card taped to your head, and somebody has to knock the card off. That's the card, not your head. Because again, this is a space carnival type thing. So there's also all sorts of carnival silliness too, outside and within the whole unset silliness. So, next up is they can't be blocked except by creatures with horsemanship. Now, horsemanship was kind of a trope. It was a useless mechanic that was introduced that basically allowed characters to ride creatures. And, it was kind of useless. It got out of hand, and they basically stopped doing it, after the original Kamigawa block. It made sense in the Kamigawa block because of the whole, samurai ninja theme. You were riding horses and whatnot, but it really doesn't matter anymore, and it was just a very clunky mechanic, and became kind of a trope of in Magic. And so again, unsets are stuff where it's troping themselves. It's making fun of stuff in the game. Next up is align the tops of both cards to check. So you actually have to compare a couple of cards. And I guess maybe it's because cards are, off center or something like that. Maybe it cares about that. Misprinted cards. That's interesting. Next up is don't explain anything else. You choose targets. So basically all you do is you say you, and you. Or that, and that. and you and you don't explain what's going on. Again, that's more unset silliness. Next up is this creature has first strike as long as it's blocking or being blocked by a creature that comes after it alphabetically. More letters matters. What could this be all about? And next up is the vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and Y. Now, this is the culmination of everything I've been talking about. Letters matters. Back in the early days of Magic, they had this card called Wheel of Fortune. And it was a card that basically had all the players discard their hand and draw 7 new cards. And back in those days, drawing that many new cards was a big deal. But what? Because this is Unfinity, this is a carnival, and what if they're troping the game show Wheel of Fortune? And you're actually having to spell out because we've seen choose A through M or N through Z, stuff alphabetically. And now it specifically mentions vowels, which is something that you see in the actual game show Wheel of Fortune. And the cards that you can get multiple prizes. So, and in this game you have the sticker cards, you have you have tickets. So that's what I'm thinking. That this is some sort of like slot game or Wheel of Fortune slot game. Yes, I can see this. And it's totally on point with it being a space carnival. And it's unset. And you're making fun of the Wheel of Fortune card. See, that's what this is about. Yeah, and I really want to see that happen. Next up, this spell costs 1 colorless less to cast for each clown you control. Well, we've already heard about a card that cares about clown tokens, and there's probably other clowns in this set, so this might be something interesting. Next up, it has their total power, total toughness, combined mana costs, all text boxes, names, art, and so on. So we talked about a card that's like all things. I think that's also part of it. That it might be one of these back in the original Unset. Unglued, I think it was. They had a 2-part monster called the Big Furry Monster, which everybody called it, the BFM for short. Or a lot of people use a word we can't mention on YouTube. Although I'm not monetized, so. But the big monster. And I think this is one of those, it's everything. It's one of these big, huge, something that makes your monster just big, huge, and overpowered and whatnot. Because the big furry monster was a 99.99. It was the biggest, monster ever seen in Magic. So I'm thinking that has something to do with that. Next up is something is hot if it has hot things in its art, like fire or explosions. So again, caring about card art. Interesting. Next up, card name divides the battlefield into alpha, beta, and gamma sectors. Is this a Star Trek trope? Are we parodying some sort of Star Trek thing? There's another card that comes up later on that I think might tie into this. Again, this is a space carnival. So we're talking about not only carnivals, but things that are in space. Next up is each time you gobble, take a bit of food or sacrifice a food token. And please, no more Cheeto fingers. Because I think in one of the previous ones said it cared about food being actually on your card. But this is talking about, eating at the magic table. And generally, that's something you don't do because you don't want to mess up the cards. Even though they're sleeves, you don't want to mess up the sleeves either. But it also has sacrifice of food tokens to give you that kind of option where you don't allow food at this magic table. Next up, you can have 2 commanders if both have partner. So we've seen the partner mechanic before in various other cards. So are we going to have some kind of thing? And it says commander. So do we actually get commander cards that you can play an unset commander? That should be interesting. Next up, it becomes 2/2, then 1/1, then 1/2, and so on. So something that reduces your power and toughness by half. And fractions matter in unsets. We've had a lot of cards in the past in unsets that cared about fractions. So next up is about 0.3 meters. So again, something to for international play, that so, and especially like those of you in Scandinavia, Canada. I like to call it Scandinavia. Don't be offended. This is an unset. We're talking about silliness here. We're not talking about serious magic. Next up is creatures in a log together can't be blocked unless they're all blocked. In a log. Now, I was just thinking, this got me to thinking about something. Could it be a log like on one of those, those water rides where you're riding a log through the tunnel of love type thing? Or is it like in Star Trek in an actual log book, like Captain's Log? Because like I said, we just had a card that talked about alpha, beta, and gamma sectors. What if this is or what if it's a Star Trek? What if it's a Star Trek game that you go through a tunnel of love, but it's all Star Trek themed, or Star Trek-esque because they don't have the rights to it, but Star Trek trope themed tunnel of love. The Captain's Log. There's all sorts. It's silliness. It's space silliness. We're gonna have all sorts of fun. We're almost done with this particular section. Next up is don't touch other people's phones without permission, and be careful if you do. Ooh, like I said, environment matters, so don't have your phones out. Next up is places, everyone. The first creature in line gets +0/+0. Again, it sounds like a carnival ride type thing. So again, more unset space carnival silliness. And next up is they continue to exist after they leave the battlefield. So maybe tokens continue to exist because they normally go away after they leave the battlefield. So it makes tokens more permanent. So we're going to stop here. We're at 15 minutes. This was a whole lot of things, but there was a lot to go through. There's a lot of things that might tie in together. So we're going to say almost 16 minutes. We got one more section to go. It's going to be a little shorter, but I want these to be in manageable, uploadable, bite-sized portions. I said bite-sized. Take a bit of food. See you on the next video.